The laughter started before Ambassador Diane Holloway even finished her first sentence. She stood at the center of the Galactic Assembly Hall, surrounded by delegates from 47 spacefaring species. Some had scales. Some had crystals growing from their skin. Some existed as floating clouds of gas contained in magnetic fields. All of them were laughing at her. 200 ships, Counselor Rathan repeated, his crystalline body chiming with amusement. The Valorian elder towered 3 meters tall, and his voice echoed through the hall like breaking glass. Your entire fleet is 200 ships. Yes, Diane said calmly, that is correct. More laughter. The Dravine delegates clicked their mandibles in their version of mockery. The Sealith coiled their serpentine bodies and hissed with delight. Even the normally stoic Brenari allowed themselves a rumbling chuckle. The Valorian defense fleet numbers 18,000 vessels, Rathan said. The Dravine collective maintains 12,000, and you come here with 200 ships asking to join our assembly as equals. Diane kept her expression neutral. Behind her, Kira Yosef, a young translator fresh from Earth, clenched her fists at her sides. Rathan waved one crystalline arm, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the hall. Images of Earth flickered across it. Wars, pollution, famine, nuclear explosions, mass graves. This is humanity, Rathan announced. A species that has spent its entire existence killing itself. Barely 3 centuries ago, they were burning each other alive over which invisible God was correct. 2 centuries ago, they nearly destroyed their own planet with atomic weapons. 1 century ago, they were still fighting over lines drawn in dirt. The assembly murmured with disgust. They call themselves intelligent, Rathan continued. Yet they have achieved faster-than-light travel only 40 years ago. They have no telepathy, no hive coordination, no crystalline memory structures. They live, 80 years? Perhaps 100 if they are lucky. Average lifespan is now 112, Diane said quietly. Rathan ignored her. They are children, violent, short-lived chaos monkeys who somehow stumbled into space. I move that their request for membership be denied. They may observe, nothing more. The vote was unanimous. Diane accepted the decision with grace. She thanked the assembly for their time. She gathered her small delegation and walked toward the exit. But she paused at the door. Counselor Rathan, she said, a question if I may. The Valorian looked down at her with barely concealed contempt. Speak. When was the last time the Valorian people fought a war? Rathan's crystalline features shifted with confusion. We have not engaged in armed conflict for 3,200 years. We evolved beyond such barbarism. Diane nodded slowly, and the Dravine. The insectoid delegates buzzed among themselves. 4,000 years, one answered, perhaps longer. The Brenari. We have never known war. Diane smiled. It was not a happy smile. Thank you, she said. That is very interesting information. She left without another word. On the shuttle back to the human vessel, Kira finally exploded. How can you be so calm? She demanded. They laughed at us. They showed our worst moments and used them to humiliate us. Diane stared out the viewport at the gleaming alien station. Did you notice something, Kira? What? Their fleets, 18,000 ships, 12,000 ships, beautiful vessels, elegant designs. Diane turned to face her young translator. Every single one built for show, not one of them has ever been tested in actual combat. Kira frowned. What does that matter? It matters because they have forgotten what war actually is. They parade their ships at ceremonies. They hold war games with predetermined outcomes. They have turned violence into theater. Diane pulled out her communicator and began typing a message. We remember, she continued. Every scar on Earth's history taught us something. We learned that wars are won not by the largest army, but by the one that refuses to break. We learned that ships must be ugly and redundant because beautiful ships die when hit. We learned that when everything goes wrong, you adapt or you die. The message went to Admiral Goro Tanaka, commander of Earth's Stellar Defense Force. "They have no idea what is coming," Diane said as she typed. "Neither do we, but we will be ready." "Coming?" Kira asked. "What do you mean?" Diane finished her message and sent it. "I have been reading the intelligence reports. Something is happening at the frontier. Colonies going dark. Communication arrays destroyed. The Assembly dismisses it as technical failures or pirate activity." She looked at Kira with eyes that had seen too much. "It is not pirates. Something is out there, something hungry. And when it arrives, all those ceremonial fleets will burn." As if summoned by her words, an alert flashed across every screen in the assembly hall behind them. A hollow scout ship had been detected entering assembly space. Through the viewport, Diane watched the great powers of the galaxy scramble. Beautiful ships launched from elegant docks. Commanders who had never heard a shot fired in anger barked orders they had learned from textbooks. Humanity watched silently. The war was coming, and for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy would remember what violence truly meant. Diane hoped they would survive the lesson. 3 months later, the Valorian First Fleet died screaming. 4,000 warships, the pride of the galaxy, 18,000 years of accumulated glory and tradition, gone in 6 hours. Counselor Rathan watched the final transmission from his quarters on Station Orionis. The footage showed Valorian vessels, those elegant crystalline masterpieces, shattering like glass ornaments against the hollow swarm. The hollow did not look like ships. They looked like nightmares given form. Biomechanical horrors that twisted and shifted, sprouting weapons from wounds, healing damage that should have been fatal. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They did not demand surrender. They simply erased. The Kestris system had held 12 billion souls across 3 habitable worlds. Now it held only ash. Rathan turned off the display. His crystalline hands were shaking. He had not known his kind could shake. A soft chime announced a visitor. He opened the door to find Ambassador Diane Holloway standing in the corridor. "Counselor," she said, "may I come in?" He stepped aside. He could not meet her eyes. "The Dravine Collective has surrendered," he said quietly. "They sent a delegation to the Hollow, offered complete submission, total cooperation. And the Hollow consumed them anyway, the entire delegation. Then they continued toward Dravine space." Rathan's voice broke. "The Collective is requesting evacuation, all 14 billion of them." Diane said nothing. "We were wrong," Rathan whispered. "About everything, about war, about violence, about you." He finally looked at her. "Your species knows this, real war, you have lived it, please help us." Diane studied him for a long moment. "3 months ago you showed the Assembly our history, our wars, our cruelty. You called us chaos monkeys." "I know." "You laughed at our 200 ships." "I know." "You denied us a seat at your table because we were too violent." Rathan closed his eyes. "I know." Diane stepped closer. When she spoke, her voice was ice. "You mocked us for the very thing that might save you. Every war we fought taught us how to survive the next one. Every scar made us stronger. And now you come begging for our violence." "Yes," Rathan said. He did not try to defend himself. "Yes, I am begging." The silence stretched between them. Then Diane nodded. "Good, begging means you understand how bad this is." She pulled out her communicator. "Admiral Tanaka, bring the fleet." 2 days later, Earth's 200 ships arrived at the Brennar system, where a hollow scout force was testing the Coalition's defenses. The alien commanders watched the human vessels with despair. The ships were ugly, asymmetrical, covered in what looked like patches and welds. They bristled with weapons that seemed crude compared to Valorian elegance. "This is what will save us," a Brennari officer muttered. "These machines." Admiral Goro, Tanaka's voice crackled over the command channel. "All ships weapons free. Show them what humans are made of." The battle lasted 4 hours. It began badly. The Hollow jammed targeting systems within the first 10 minutes. The alien observers waited for the human fleet to fall apart. Instead, human gunners switched to manual targeting. They aimed with their eyes and fired with their hands, just as their ancestors had done with cannons and rifles. When shields failed on the destroyer Relentless, the crew vented atmosphere from damaged sections and kept fighting in vacuum suits. When the cruiser Defiance was boarded, her crew did not surrender. They grabbed cutting torches and metal pipes and met the Hollow in the corridors. Security footage later showed a human engineer beating a Hollow drone to death with a fire extinguisher. When the frigate Last Stand lost her engines, her captain aimed the dying ship at the largest Hollow vessel and accelerated. The explosion took out 3 enemy ships. By hour 3, the Hollow were retreating. By hour 4, they were gone. Humanity had lost 42 ships. The Hollow had lost 96. It was the first victory anyone had won against the Hollow, the first time the swarm had been pushed back. Rathan stood in the observation deck of Station Orionis, watching the battle footage for the 5th time. Beside him, Admiral Tanaka reviewed damage reports. "Your ships," Rathan said slowly, "they are ugly." "Yes. They are built to take damage, to continue fighting while broken." "Yes. You expect to be hurt, you plan for it." Tanaka looked at the Valorian. "Our ships are not temples, they are tools. They exist to fight, to bleed, and to win. Beauty does not matter when you are dying." Rathan watched the footage again. A human pilot, her cockpit on fire, steering her burning fighter into a Hollow weapons platform. "Your people," he whispered, "they are insane." Admiral Tanaka allowed himself a small smile. "We prefer determined." The coalition had hope again, small and fragile but real. And the Hollow had learned something new. There was a species in this galaxy that did not break, a species that had been forged in the fires of its own violence. The war was just beginning, but for the first time it was a war that could be won. Sergeant Yuki Harding found the Brenari soldier hiding behind a destroyed tank, rocking back and forth with his massive arms wrapped around his knees. 8 months of war had broken him. His scales had turned pale gray, a sign of extreme stress in his species. His eyes stared at nothing. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Around them, the battle continued. Hollow ground forces pushed through the ruins of Brennar Prime's capital city. Explosions shook the rubble. Screams echoed between shattered buildings. Yuki did not yell at the soldier. She did not threaten him or remind him of his duty. Instead, she knelt beside him and placed her hand on his trembling claw. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey, look at me." The Brenari's eyes slowly focused on her face. "What is your name?" Yuki asked. "Grath," he whispered. "My name is Grath." "Grath, I need you to listen to me. Are you listening?" He nodded weakly. "It is okay to be afraid. Fear is not weakness. Fear is your brain telling you that something dangerous is happening. That is useful information." Grath stared at her. "You are not afraid." Yuki laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. "I am terrified every single moment, every battle. I have been afraid since this war started, and I will be afraid until it ends." "Then how do you keep fighting?" Yuki squeezed his claw. "Because I learned to use the fear. Let it make you sharp. Let it make you fast, feel it, accept it, and then do what needs to be done anyway. That is the human way." Something changed in Grath's eyes. The emptiness began to fill with something else. Not courage exactly, understanding. "Now," Yuki said, pulling him to his feet. "We have a line to hold. Can you hold it with me?" Grath took a shaky breath, then another. Then he picked up his weapon. "Yes, Sergeant, I can." They held the line, and when the battle ended, Grath was still standing. 3 sectors away, Dr. Obiademi had not slept in 36 hours. The field hospital was overflowing. Brenari, Valorians, Sealith, species she had never even met before the war, all of them bleeding, all of them dying. Her human medical team worked alongside alien doctors, but human hands moved faster. Human minds adapted quicker to unfamiliar anatomy. When a Valorian surgeon froze at the sight of so much damage, a human nurse gently moved him aside and continued the operation. A Sealith commander was brought in, his serpentine body torn open by shrapnel. 3 months ago, his species had called humans short-lived vermin. Now he looked up at Obi with desperate eyes. "Please," he hissed, "please help me." Obi did not hesitate. She worked for 4 hours, rebuilding organs she had only seen in textbooks, using techniques she invented on the spot. When it was over, the Sealith would live. Another doctor, a young Brenari, approached her. "Why?" he asked. "His people insulted you, laughed at you. Why save him?" Obi wiped the blood from her hands. "Because he needed help, that is enough." The Brenari had no response to that. Across the galaxy, Rithan sat alone in his quarters, watching human history files. He had watched them 100 times before, always focusing on the violence, the wars, the cruelty. Now he watched differently. After every war, humans rebuilt. Cities rose from ashes, enemies became allies. Children played in parks that had once been battlefields. After every disaster, humans helped strangers. They pulled survivors from rubble. They shared food with people they had never met. They donated blood to save lives they would never know. They carried their wounded. They buried their dead with honor. They wept openly and then returned to work. Rithan had lived for 600 years. In all that time, he had never seen anything like this. Humans were not violent because they enjoyed destruction. They were violent because they loved something enough to fight for it, their families, their homes, their future. And when the fighting stopped, they did not hold grudges. They healed, they forgave, they moved forward. A message arrived from Admiral Tanaka. The coalition commanders were meeting to discuss new strategies. Rithan was invited. He arrived to find humans teaching concepts that made no sense to alien minds. Guerrilla warfare, retreat to preserve forces, sacrifice ground to save lives, fight dirty when clean fighting meant death. War is not about glory, Tanaka explained to the assembled commanders. It is not about honor or tradition. War is about survival. You do whatever it takes to make sure your people see tomorrow. A Valorian officer protested, but the ancient codes of combat require. The ancient codes are why your fleet burned at Kestris, Tanaka interrupted. The Hollow do not care about your codes. They do not care about fair fights. They only care about winning. He looked around the room. We will teach you how to win, but you must be willing to learn. One by one, the alien commanders nodded. The galaxy was learning what humans had always known. Violence was terrible, but sometimes terrible things were necessary to protect what mattered. And humans had spent their entire history learning that lesson. The funeral pyres burned for 3 days on the surface of Mars. 14 months of war, 40% of Earth's fleet destroyed. Countless human soldiers buried in alien soil across 100 worlds. The cost was beyond calculation. Ambassador Diane Holloway stood among the mourners, watching the flames consume the bodies of heroes whose names would be carved into monuments. Beside her, a Valorian officer observed the ceremony with confusion. "You burn your dead," he said quietly. "Some of us, others bury them. Others scatter their ashes in places they loved." Diane's voice was steady. "We honor them however they wish to be honored. And then we return to the war." The Valorian was silent for a long moment. "How do you bear it, the loss? Every day more of your people die, and yet you continue. Does it not break you?" Diane watched the flames dance against the Martian sky. "We do not bear it, we carry it, every name. Every face, that is why we fight so hard, so there will not be more names to carry." Before the officer could respond, her communicator buzzed. "Intelligence report, priority 1." The news was worse than anything she had imagined. The Hollow were building something, Deep in the dead space beyond the frontier, they had constructed a massive device. A gateway, a door to whatever dimension they came from. If completed, it would allow unlimited hollow reinforcements to pour into the galaxy. An endless army against the Coalition's dwindling forces. The calculations were simple and brutal. The Coalition could not win a war of attrition. They were running out of ships, running out of soldiers, running out of time. The Hollow were infinite. An emergency assembly meeting was called. Representatives from every surviving species gathered in the Great Hall of Station Orionis. The debate was short and bitter. "We must flee," a Sealith delegate argued. "Retreat to the far edges of the galaxy, hide, wait for the Hollow to lose interest." "They will not lose interest," Rathan replied. He stood taller now than he had a year ago. War had changed him. "They consume everything. There is no hiding from extinction." "Then we surrender, offer them whatever they want." The Dravines surrendered. The Hollow ate them anyway. The assembly dissolved into shouting. Species that had once mocked humanity now wept with fear. 3,000 years of peace had left them unprepared for this moment. They did not know how to face annihilation. Diane Holloway stood. The room slowly fell silent. 3,000 years ago, she said, you stopped fighting. You forgot what war costs. You forgot what it means to sacrifice everything for survival. She walked to the center of the hall. We never forgot. Humanity remembers every war, every grave, every name carved into stone. We remember because forgetting would dishonor those who died. Her voice grew stronger. You laughed at us for our violence. You called us chaos monkeys, short-lived savages who had not evolved past barbarism. She looked around the room, meeting every frightened eye. Now that violence is the only thing standing between you and extinction, and we are not running. Admiral Tanaka stepped forward with a holographic display. The gateway, the Hollow fleet defending it, the impossible odds. A surgical strike, he explained. Everything we have left won. Chance to destroy the gateway before it activates. The odds, someone asked. Poor, most of us will not come back. Silence. We need volunteers only, Diane said. No one will be ordered to die. This is a choice. Every human in the room stepped forward. Tanaka, the ship captains, the soldiers, the pilots, every single one. For a long moment, no one else moved. Then Rathan walked to stand beside Diane. You taught me that fear can be useful, he said quietly. Let me show you I learned the lesson. More aliens stepped forward. Brenari, Sealith, species that had never known war until the Hollow came. They were terrified. Their bodies shook. Their eyes were wide with fear. But they stepped forward anyway. Diane felt something she had not expected. Pride. Not in humanity alone, but in what the galaxy was becoming. The fleet departed 2 days later. 300 ships. Human vessels leading the way, alien ships following in their wake. It was the largest combined force the Coalition had ever assembled. It was also probably not enough. On Earth, billions watched the fleet disappear into the darkness. News networks fell silent. There was nothing left to say. The fate of every living being in the galaxy now rested on the shoulders of those volunteers. Kira Yosef, now a senior diplomat, stood on the observation deck of Station Orionis. Beside her, a young Brenari student watched the stars. Are you afraid? He asked. Kira thought of Sergeant Harding's words. Feel the fear, accept it. Do what needs to be done anyway. Yes, she said, but fear does not control me. The galaxy held its breath. The war was about to reach its final battle. And one way or another, the silence was coming. The Coalition fleet emerged from hyperspace into hell. Thousands of hollow vessels surrounded the gateway construction site. The massive structure pulsed with sickly light, nearly complete. Beyond it, something vast and terrible waited on the other side. Admiral Tanaka did not hesitate. All ships weapons free, make them remember us. The battle began. Human vessels punched through the first hollow line with brutal efficiency. They had learned every trick, every weakness, every gap in hollow tactics over 14 months of constant warfare. They exploited every advantage without mercy. But the hollow were endless. For every ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The coalition fleet shrank with. Every passing minute, brave captains died, brave crews followed. Sergeant Yuki Harding did not see the space battle. She was on the ground, leading a mixed strike team through the corridors of the Gateway facility itself. Humans and aliens fought side by side. Brenari soldiers shielded human marines with their massive bodies. Sealith warriors struck from shadows with their natural camouflage. Valorians used their crystalline limbs as weapons when ammunition ran out. The hollow met them at every turn. The corridor fights were savage. Bodies fell. Blood of a dozen colors stained the metal floors. Yuki took a hit to her leg. The pain was blinding, but she kept moving. She had taught too many soldiers to fight through fear to stop now. A massive Brenari lifted her onto his shoulder and carried her forward. Grath, she gasped, recognizing the soldier from Brennar Prime, the one she had found hiding behind a destroyed tank. "You taught me to use the fear," he said. "Now let me carry you." They pushed deeper into the facility. Dr. Obi Ademi was not supposed to be on the strike team. She was a medic, not a soldier. But wounded needed treatment, and she refused to stay behind while others died. The team reached a choke point, a long corridor with hollow forces massing on the other side. Someone needed to hold it while the rest advanced. Obi looked at the wounded she could not carry, at the soldiers who needed a clear path forward, at the mission that had to succeed. "Go," she said quietly. "I will hold them." "Doctor, no." "I said go." They went. Obi Ademi stayed behind with her medical kit and a rifle she barely knew how to use. She held the corridor for 7 minutes. 7 minutes that changed everything. She did not survive. The core of the gateway was a nightmare of organic machinery. The strike team arrived battered and bleeding, with barely half their original numbers still standing. The only way to destroy it was manual detonation. The control systems were too complex to hack, too well defended to bomb from orbit. Someone had to stay behind and trigger the explosives by hand. They all knew what that meant. Rithan stepped forward. "No," Yuki said. "Counselor, you do not have to." "I spent 600 years mocking your species," Rithan interrupted. His crystalline body was cracked in a dozen places, leaking light from his wounds. "I called you violent, short-lived, primitive." He looked at the humans around him, at Grath, who had learned to use his fear, at the empty space where Obi had stood. "Let me spend my last moments honoring what humanity taught me. That sacrifice is not weakness. That standing for others is the highest purpose any being can have." Yuki wanted to argue. She wanted to find another way. But there was no other way, and they were out of time. She clasped Rithan's damaged claw. "Make it count." "I will." The strike team retreated. Behind them, Rithan set the charges and waited for the hollow to come. The gateway exploded with a light that could be seen across the system. In space, the hollow fleet faltered. Cut off from reinforcements, suddenly alone, they began to retreat. The coalition pressed the advantage with everything they had left. Admiral Tanaka's flagship was destroyed in the final push. He transferred command to another ship and kept fighting. Humans were used to losing leaders and continuing anyway. By the time the last hollow vessel fled into the darkness, the coalition fleet was a shadow of what it had been. But they had won. The communication channels fell silent. No cheering, no celebration, just exhausted soldiers staring at stars that no longer held death. Yuki Harding sat on the deck of the evacuation shuttle, surrounded by survivors. Grath was beside her, his massive form somehow smaller than before. "The war," he said quietly, "is it over?" Yuki thought of Obi, of Rithan, of every name that would need to be carved into stone. "The fighting is over," she said, "but we will carry this forever." The galaxy had been saved. The price was beyond counting. And in the silence that followed, something new began to grow. 1 year after the Battle of the Threshold, a new monument stood at the heart of Station Orionis. It was not beautiful. It was not elegant. It was a wall of black stone, stretching 50 meters in every direction, covered in names. Every name of every being who had died in the war against the Hollow. Billions of names, in 100 languages, in scripts that most species could not read. Ambassador Diane Holloway had insisted on it. "Names matter," she had told the assembly. "They were not numbers, they were not statistics, they were people. We will remember them." The monument had taken 6 months to build. Species that had lost entire worlds contributed to its construction. They carved the names of. They're dead beside the names of humans, beside the names of Valorians, beside the names of beings from every corner of the galaxy. At the dedication ceremony, a young Valorian approached Diane. She was small for her kind, barely 2 meters tall, with fresh crystals just beginning to form on her shoulders. "Ambassador Holloway," she said softly, "I am Rathan's granddaughter, Selene." Diane felt old pain stir in her chest. She had watched Rathan's final transmission from the Gateway core. She had heard his last words before the explosion. "Your grandfather was a hero," she said. Selene's crystalline features shifted with emotion her species rarely showed. "He spoke of you before the end. He sent a message to my family. He said that humans taught him what courage truly means, that standing for others is the highest purpose any being can have." Diane was quiet for a moment. "Your grandfather taught us something too. He showed that anyone can learn, anyone can change. That is worth more than courage." The Galactic Assembly reconvened the following day. The chamber looked different now. Human engineers had helped rebuild it after Hollow attacks. Valorian architects had contributed designs. Brenari workers had done the heavy lifting. It was no longer the pristine hall of 3,000 years of peace. It was scarred, patched, imperfect. It was stronger. The assembly voted unanimously. Humanity was granted full membership. But more than that, they were asked to lead the new combined defense force. Captain Sana Ibori, who had served under Admiral Tanaka until his death, accepted on behalf of Earth. She was 34 years old, scarred from a dozen battles, and tired in ways that sleep could not fix. "We will not build an empire," she said. "We will not rule you. We are not conquerors, and we have no interest in becoming them." The assembly listened in silence. "We will teach you what we know, how to fight, how to survive, how to carry the weight of loss without breaking. And we will learn what you know, your science, your philosophy, your art." She looked around the chamber. "That is how this works. We grow together, or we fall alone." The vote was unanimous again. Months later, Kira Yosef hosted a group of young aliens in the Human Cultural Center on Station Orionis. They had come to study human history, to understand the species that had saved the galaxy. They asked about the war. Kira told them stories about Dr. Obiademi, who held a corridor for 7 minutes and saved the strike team, about Sergeant Yuki Harding, who taught an alien soldier to use his fear, about all the names carved into the black stone monument. "Were you not angry?" a young Brenari asked. His scales were bright green, marking him as barely an adult. "We mocked you, laughed at you, called you violent and primitive, then we begged you to die for us." Kira thought for a long moment. "Yes, we were angry. Some of us are still angry," she smiled slightly. "But anger fades. What stays is this: when the galaxy needed help, we helped. When others ran, we stood. Not because we wanted glory, not because we wanted revenge, because it was the right thing to do." She looked out the viewport at the stars. "Humanity has always been messy, violent, contradictory. We are capable of terrible cruelty and incredible kindness. What defines us is not the darkness we carry. It is what we choose to do despite it." A proximity alert chimed softly. A hollow fragment had been detected at the edge of charted space. Not attacking, just watching. The response was different this time. A combined fleet mobilized within hours. Human vessels, Valorian cruisers, Brenari carriers, a dozen other species working together with practiced efficiency. Captain Ibori sent a single message to the hollow fragment. We remember what you did. We also remember what we are capable of. Leave and live. Stay and learn why the war went quiet. The hollow fragment retreated. And somewhere on Station Orionis, a human was teaching an alien how to play chess, while an alien doctor used techniques learned from Dr. Adami to save a human child. The galaxy was scarred, but it was healing. The war was quiet now. And in the silence, something new was growing.